Captain Lee Hyun stood at the viewing window of the human transport ship as it moved toward the massive space station. The station was called Nexus Prime, and it was bigger than any city on Earth. Lights covered its surface like stars, and ships from dozens of different worlds flew around it like busy insects. First time seeing it, asked Ambassador Park Min-ji as she joined him at the window. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a calm voice. Lee Hyun had worked with her before, and he knew she was one of the smartest people he had ever met. "Yes," Lee Hyun said. "It's hard to believe something that big can float in space." "Wait until you see the inside," said Commander Kim Tae-ho from behind them. He was checking his security equipment one more time. As head of the human protection team, he did not trust anyone or anything in space. The main meeting room can hold 10,000 beings. Dr. Choi Yuna looked up from her tablet where she was reading about the different alien species they would meet. "Remember, we need to be careful with our words. Some of these species are very old and think they know everything. They might not like new ideas." Lee Hyun nodded. He had been a soldier for most of his life before becoming a diplomat. He understood that this meeting was like a battle, but they would fight with words instead of weapons. The humans had worked for years to get this chance to join the Galactic Council. Earth needed new technology and trade partners to help feed and protect their growing population. The transport ship moved into a docking bay that was full of strange vessels. Some looked like metal flowers, others like giant insects. The human ship looked plain and simple next to them, which made Lee Hyun feel a little worried. "Our ship might look basic, but it got us here safely," Park Min-ji said, as if she could read his thoughts. "That's what matters." They walked through corridors filled with beings that Lee Hyun had only seen in videos before. Some were tall and thin with blue skin. Others were short and covered in fur. A few looked like walking rocks. Most of them stared at the humans as they passed, and Lee Hyun did not think the looks were friendly. The main meeting hall was even bigger than Kim Tae-ho had said. The ceiling was so high that clouds could have formed inside it. Thousands of seats were arranged, in circles around a central stage where the speakers would stand. Each section was for a different species, and the humans had been given a small area near the back. "Not the best seats," muttered Kim Tae-ho. "We're new here," Dr. Choi Yuna reminded him. "We have to earn our place." The meeting began with speeches from the older council members. The Zilithian Chancellor Vextar spoke first. He was tall and pale with silver hair and wore robes that seemed to glow. His voice was loud and clear as he talked about trade agreements and territorial disputes between the member species. When it was time for new membership applications, Park Min-ji walked to the center stage. Lee Hyun felt proud as he watched her present their case. She spoke about Earth's resources, human creativity, and their desire to learn from other species. She showed videos of human art, music, and scientific discoveries. But when she finished, the hall was quiet. Not the good kind of quiet where people were thinking carefully about what they had heard. It was the bad kind of quiet that came before something terrible happened. Chancellor Vextar stood up slowly. A cold smile spread across his face. "These creatures," he said, pointing at the human section, "think they belong among us. Look at them. They are barely able to travel between planets, yet they want to sit with civilizations that have mastered the stars for thousands of years." Laughter began to spread through the hall. It started with a few beings and grew louder until it felt like thunder. Lee Hyun's hands turned into fists, but he forced himself to stay calm. "They call themselves human," continued Vextar. "But what are they really? Primitive apes who learned to use fire. Their ships are slow and ugly. Their technology is simple and weak. They fight wars among themselves like animals." High Priest Morgoth of the Korthak stood up next. He was covered in dark scales and had 4 arms that moved like snakes. "My species has studied the humans for years," he said in a voice that sounded like rocks grinding together. "They are violent and stupid. They destroy their own planet and kill each other for meaningless reasons. They are not ready to join civilized beings." More species began to speak against humanity. They called humans warmongers and children playing with dangerous toys. They said human technology was embarrassing, and human culture was primitive, beyond belief. Each insult felt like a physical blow to Lee Hyun. Dr. Choi Yuna tried to stand up to answer their accusations, but the council members would not let her speak. They had made up their minds before the humans had even arrived. Perhaps in 1,000 years, said Chancellor Vextar with fake kindness. After your species has evolved beyond its current savage state, you may return. Until then, do not waste our time with your pathetic requests. The decision was final. The humans were not just rejected, they were humiliated in front of the entire galaxy. As they walked back to their ship, aliens pointed at them and whispered among themselves. Some even threw small objects at them. Park Minji walked with her head high, but Lee Hyun could see tears in her eyes. Kim Tae-ho looked like he wanted to fight someone. And Dr. Choi Yuna stared at the floor as they moved through the corridors. On the transport ship, they sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Park Minji spoke. They never intended to let us join. This was all just entertainment. For them, they called us animals, said Kim Tae-ho. His voice was quiet, but Lee Hyun could hear the anger in it. Maybe, said Dr. Choi Yuna softly. We should show them what animals can do when they're backed into a corner. Lee Hyun looked out the window as they flew away from Nexus Prime. The huge station was shrinking behind them, but he would never forget what had happened inside it. The galaxy had made its feelings about humanity very clear. Now it was time for humanity to respond, but not in the way the aliens expected. The human transport ship landed on Earth 3 days after the disaster at Nexus Prime. Lee Hyun stepped out into the familiar air of his home planet and felt both relief and anger. The blue sky and green trees looked beautiful after the cold, metal corridors of the space station, but he could not forget the insults that still rang in his ears. President Yoon Jin-ho waited for them at the landing pad along with several members of the Global Defense Council. He was a tall man with gray hair and serious eyes that had seen many difficult decisions. General Kang Sora stood beside him, her military uniform perfect and her face showing no emotion. How bad was it? President Yoon asked as the delegation approached. Worse than we expected, Park Minji replied. Her voice was steady, but Lee Hyun could see she was tired. They did not just reject us. They made sure everyone in the galaxy knows they think we are nothing more than stupid animals. President Yoon nodded slowly. Come, we need to talk about this properly. They drove to a secret underground facility beneath the capital city. Lee Hyun had never been there before, but he could tell it was important from the heavy security and the way people moved with urgent purpose. The meeting room was deep underground, protected by thick walls and electronic shields that would stop anyone from listening to their conversation. Tell us everything, General Kang Sora said once they were seated around a large table. For the next hour, the delegation described what had happened at Nexus Prime. They talked about the laughter, the insults, and the way the alien leaders had treated them like unwelcome visitors at a party for important people. When they finished, the room was quiet. President Yoon stared at his hands for a long moment before speaking. So they see us as primitive, animals who are too stupid and violent to join their civilized society. That seems to be their opinion, Park Minji said. Then perhaps, President Yoon said slowly, it is time to show them what primitive animals can do when they are threatened. General, Kang Sora smiled for the first time since the meeting began. I was hoping you would say that. She pressed a button on the table, and the wall behind her became a giant screen. Images began to appear showing spaceships, weapons, and technology that Lee Hyun had never seen before. While our diplomats were trying to make friends with the galaxy, General Kang Sora explained, our scientists and engineers were preparing for the possibility that friendship might not be enough. Dr. Lim Junho entered the room carrying a thick folder of documents. He was the head of Earth's Advanced Research Division, and Lee Hyun had heard stories about the amazing things his team could create. But seeing the images on the screen, he realized the stories had not told him everything. Project Prometheus, Dr. Lim Junho said, pointing to the first set of images. We have built artificial intelligence systems that can think faster and better than any biological brain. They can control entire fleets of ships or run complex calculations in seconds. The next images showed ships that seemed to fade in and out of sight like ghosts. The Ghost Protocol. Our stealth technology makes our vessels completely invisible to any sensors the galactic species currently use. They base their sensor technology on energy detection, but we learned to hide energy signatures completely. Li Hyun leaned forward to get a better look. The ships in the images looked nothing like the simple transport that had carried them to Nexus Prime. These were sleek and dangerous, like sharks made of metal and light. "How long have you been working on this?" Commander Kim Tai-ho asked. 15 years, Dr. Lim Jun-ho replied. "We started the project after our first contact with galactic civilization. We hoped we would never need these technologies, but we wanted to be ready just in case." General Kang Sora stood up and walked to the screen. "The aliens think we are primitive because we still fight wars and build weapons. They have forgotten that sometimes violence is necessary to protect what you love. We have not forgotten." She showed them more images. Huge orbital platforms surrounded Earth like a metal ring. Weapons that could destroy entire fleets pointed toward space, ready to defend the planet from any attack. "The Titan Defense Network," she explained. "Automated systems that can fight without human pilots. If anyone tries to attack Earth, they will face more firepower than they can imagine." President Yoon stood up and looked at each person in the he room. "The galactic community has made their position clear. They do not want us as equals and they do not respect us as intelligent beings, so we will give them what they want." "What do you mean?" Dr. Choi Yuna asked. "We will disappear," President Yoon said. "We will recall all our diplomatic missions. We will stop all trade with galactic species. We will cut all communication. To them, humanity will simply vanish." Li Hyun felt a chill run down his spine. "What about our people who are already working in galactic space?" "They will come home," General Kang Sora said. "All of them. Every human diplomat, trader, scientist, and tourist will return to Earth or human colonies. We will close our borders completely." Park Minji looked worried. "That seems extreme. Maybe we should try to negotiate with individual species who might be more friendly." "No," President Yoon said firmly. "They had their chance to treat us with respect. They chose mockery and insults instead. Now they will learn what it means to lose something they never knew they had." Dr. Lim Jun-ho activated another screen showing a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked human locations, including Earth, the Moon, bases, Mars colonies, and mining stations in the asteroid belt. But there were also green dots in places Li Hyun did not recognize. "What are those green markers?" he asked. "Secret outposts," Dr. Lim Jun-ho said with a small smile. "Places where we have been quietly building and testing new technologies. The galactic community thinks they know where all humans live, but they are wrong." Over the next few hours, the leadership team outlined their plan. It was called Operation Silent Running, and it would make humanity invisible to the galaxy while they prepared for whatever might come next. All human ships currently in galactic space would return home using routes that avoided detection. The secret bases would expand their operations, building new ships and weapons using the advanced technologies that Dr. Lim Jun-ho's team had developed. Most importantly, humanity would use this time to learn everything they could about galactic civilization while remaining completely hidden. "How long will this take?" Li Hyun asked. "As long as necessary," President Yoon replied. "Maybe 5 years, maybe 10. When we are ready, the galaxy will discover that the primitive animals they insulted have become something much more dangerous." General Kang Sora walked to the door, then turned back to look at them. "They called us violent and primitive. They said we were not ready to sit with civilized species. Soon they will learn that being civilized and being strong are not the same thing." As the meeting ended, Li Hyun realized that everything was about to change. The human race had been humiliated and rejected, but instead of giving up, they were going to use that anger to become something the galaxy had never seen before. The aliens thought they knew what humans were capable of. They were about to discover how wrong they had been. 5 years had passed since humanity disappeared from galactic society. In the great meeting halls of Nexus Prime, Chancellor Vextar often bragged about how his firm leadership had driven away the primitive human species before they could contaminate civilized space. It was the right decision, he told other council members during their monthly gatherings. Imagine if we had allowed those violent creatures to spread their barbaric ways among peaceful species. We saved the galaxy from a terrible mistake. The other alien leaders agreed with him. They had forgotten about humans completely and returned to their normal business of trade agreements, territorial disputes, and cultural exchanges. Life in galactic civilization continued as it always had, peaceful and orderly. But in the outer, rim territories, strange things were beginning to happen. Captain Zekmor of the Draxian pirate fleet had built his reputation on being impossible to catch. His ships were fast, his crew was ruthless, and his hiding places were secret. For 20 years he had raided merchant vessels and stolen cargo worth millions of credits. The galactic authorities had never even come close to capturing him. That was why he could not understand what happened on the night his entire fleet vanished. Zekmor had been sleeping in his command cabin when the attack began. He woke up to silence, which was wrong because a pirate ship was never quiet. There should have been engine noise, crew conversations, and the constant beeping of electronic systems. When he reached his bridge, he found his crew unconscious but breathing. All the ship's weapons were disabled, and the main computer showed a simple message. Your days of stealing and killing are over. Find a new job. Security footage showed nothing. One moment his ships were flying in formation through empty space, and the next moment they were drifting powerless, with their crews unconscious. Whatever had attacked them was completely invisible to their sensors. Zekmor was not the only criminal leader to experience such mysterious problems. The Corvin slave trading syndicate operated from a heavily fortified asteroid base in the Helix, Nebula. They had been capturing and selling intelligent beings for decades, protected by bribed officials and hired mercenaries. Their base had shields that could stop battleship attacks and weapons that could destroy anything that came too close. But when the morning shift arrived for work, they found the base empty. Every slave had been freed and transported to safety. Every slaver was gone, leaving behind only their empty clothes and a message written on the main computer. Slavery ends here. The freed prisoners later told investigators that shadowy figures had appeared in their cells during the night, speaking in whispers and moving like ghosts. These figures had unlocked every cage and led thousands of captives to ships that seemed to appear from nowhere. No one could explain how attackers had penetrated the base's defenses without triggering a single alarm. Similar incidents happened across the galaxy. Corrupt officials who sold false documents to criminals would wake up to find their offices cleaned out and their illegal records exposed to the authorities. War criminals hiding on remote planets would simply vanish from their homes, leaving no trace except messages warning other criminals to change their ways. Commander Osungmin knew exactly what was happening, because he was the one making it happen. He led a group of human special operations soldiers called the Shadow Fleet. Their ships used the Ghost Protocol technology that made them invisible to all galactic sensors. Their weapons were silent and their movements were perfectly coordinated. Target acquired, whispered Lieutenant Park Soo-young through the communication system. She was watching a meeting of black market arms dealers from her hidden position on a nearby asteroid. Confirmed, replied Sergeant Kim Yeon-soo from his position inside the criminal base. He had infiltrated the facility using adaptive camouflage that made him nearly invisible. 12 hostiles, no innocent civilians present. Commander Oh Seung-min reviewed the mission parameters one more time. These arms dealers sold weapons to terrorist groups that attacked civilian targets. They had been operating for years without interference because they paid bribes to local authorities. Execute, he commanded. The attack was over in 30 seconds. The criminals found themselves surrounded by enemies they could not see, using weapons they had never encountered. When it was finished, the arms dealers were unconscious and tied up, ready to be delivered to proper authorities. Their weapon stockpiles were destroyed, and their criminal records were transmitted to every law enforcement agency in the sector. The Shadow Fleet had been conducting operations like this for 3 years. They were not trying to help galactic civilization, although that was often the result. They were testing human technology and gathering intelligence about alien capabilities. Every mission taught them something new about how the different species thought and fought. The information was sent back to Earth, where it was analyzed by teams of experts who were planning for humanity's eventual return to galactic society. But the Shadow Fleet was only a small part of what humanity was doing during their silent years on a hidden planet in the Perseus Arm. Dr. Han Jiwoo stood in her laboratory watching the results of humanity's greatest scientific breakthrough. Through the window she could see a world that had been dead and lifeless just 6 months ago. Now it had blue oceans, green forests, and white clouds covering its surface. "The terraforming process is ahead of schedule," reported Engineer Bae Sunho as he joined her at the window. "The atmospheric processors are working better than we hoped. This planet will be ready for human colonization in another 2 months." Dr. Han Jiwoo smiled as she watched birds flying through the alien sky. They were Earthbirds, but they had been genetically modified to thrive in the slightly different conditions of this new world. "How many planets are we working on now?" she asked. 43, Bae Sunho replied. "The automated construction systems are building faster than we can keep track of. Each planet takes about 8 months to transform from dead rock to living world." The terraforming technology was another example of human innovation that the galactic species had never imagined. While they spent centuries slowly adapting dead planets for colonization, humans had learned to completely transform entire worlds in less than a year. Self-replicating manufacturing systems built the equipment needed for terraforming. Quantum tunneling drives allowed human ships to travel instantly between star systems without using the slow hyperspace routes that galactic civilization depended on. Most importantly, advanced artificial intelligence systems coordinated everything, making decisions and adjustments faster than any biological mind could follow. "The AI reports are interesting," Bae Sunho said as he handed Dr. Han Jiwoo a data tablet. "They estimate that we now control more territory than any 3 galactic council species combined, but no one knows we exist." Dr. Han Jiwoo read through the reports with growing amazement. In just 5 years, humanity had secretly built an empire that stretched across hundreds of star systems. They had established colonies, mining operations, research facilities, and military bases in regions of space that the galactic community considered empty or worthless. "The construction rate is increasing exponentially," she noted. "The AI systems are learning to build better versions of themselves." "Yes," Bae Sunho agreed. "They estimate that within another 5 years, we will have the industrial capacity to outproduce the entire galactic economy." Through the laboratory window, they watched as massive orbital platforms moved into position around the newly terraformed planet. Each platform was larger than the biggest space stations in galactic civilization, but they had been built by automated systems in just a few weeks. "Sometimes I wonder if we are moving too fast," Dr. Han Jiwoo said quietly. "The galaxy called us primitive animals," Bae Sunho reminded her. "They said we were too violent and stupid to join civilized society. When we return, we need to make sure they understand their mistake." Dr. Han Jiwoo nodded. She remembered the reports from Nexus Prime, the insults and humiliation that humanity had endured. The aliens had thought they were dealing with a weak species that could be safely ignored. Soon they would learn the difference between being civilized and being strong. The warning came from the edge of galactic space where few ships ever traveled. A science vessel monitoring cosmic radiation detected massive energy signatures moving through the void between galaxies. The readings were unlike anything in the galactic database. Dr. Veltar of the Zilithian Science Academy studied the data with growing concern. The energy patterns suggested technology far more advanced than anything possessed by known civilizations. Whatever was creating these signatures was heading directly toward galactic space. "Chancellor," she said as she contacted the leader of the Galactic Council, "we have a problem." Chancellor Vextar was in his private chambers reviewing trade reports when the emergency communication reached him. He had aged in the 5 years since the human incident, and his silver hair had turned completely white. Leading the galaxy was more difficult than he had expected, especially with so many species arguing about resources and territory. "What kind of problem?" he asked, not really paying attention. "Long-range sensors have detected approaching vessels," Dr. Veltar explained. "The technology appears to be thousands of years more advanced than ours. They will reach the outer colonies within days." That got Chancellor Vexitar's attention. He sat up straight and focused on the communication screen. "Are you certain these are not just natural phenomena?" "The patterns are clearly artificial," Dr. Veltar replied, "and they are accelerating. Whatever is coming has noticed our civilization and is moving to intercept us." Within hours, emergency sessions were called throughout galactic space. The Galactic Council convened at Nexus Prime, while military commanders prepared their fleets for possible combat. No one knew what they were facing, but the energy readings suggested something far beyond their ability to resist. The first attack came without warning. The mining colony on Zerion Prime simply stopped transmitting signals. When rescue ships arrived, they found the planet stripped of all life and resources. The surface was covered in strange metallic structures that pulsed with alien energy. The attacking vessels appeared soon after. They were massive geometric shapes that seemed to absorb light itself, making them difficult to see against the starfield. When galactic ships tried to engage them, their weapons had no effect. The alien vessels responded by completely destroying entire fleets with weapons that turned matter into pure energy. The beings that emerged from the ships were not alive in any sense that galactic civilization understood. They were mechanical constructs with bodies made of self-repairing metal and minds that operated like vast computers. They communicated in mathematical patterns and showed no interest in negotiation or mercy. High Priest Morgeth of the Korthak was among the first leaders to encounter them directly. His homeworld was invaded by thousands of the mechanical beings who began systematically harvesting every living creature they could find. "We are the Void Reapers," they announced in voices that sounded like grinding machinery. "We have returned to reclaim what was ours. All organic life in this region will be processed for resources." The galactic military response was a disaster. Ships that had seemed powerful suddenly appeared primitive compared to Void Reaper technology. Weapons that could destroy planets barely scratched the hull plating of enemy vessels. Shields that could stop stellar radiation collapsed instantly under alien attack. World after world fell to the advancing Reapers. The Zilithian homeworld was destroyed in a matter of hours, its billions of inhabitants converted into raw materials for the construction of more Reaper ships. Chancellor Vextar died trying to evacuate civilians. His final message, a desperate plea for any species that could help. The Korthak spiritual centers were annihilated next. High Priest Morgeth escaped in a damaged refugee ship, but most of his people were gone. The great temples that had stood for thousands of years were torn apart and recycled into Reaper construction materials. In the emergency council session that followed, the surviving leaders faced a terrible truth. They were completely outmatched. The Void Reapers possessed technology that made galactic civilization look like children playing with primitive toys. "We need help," declared Chancellor Protem Kellan, who had assumed leadership after Vextar's death. She was younger than most council members, but the crisis had forced rapid changes in galactic leadership. "We must contact every species we know, including those we have had disagreements with." "What about the humans?" asked Councillor Dexani of the Rigelian Republic. He was a small, furry being who had always been more moderate in his views than the previous leadership. The council chamber fell silent. No one had spoken about humans in years. After their rejection, the species had simply vanished from galactic society. Most leaders had assumed they had returned to their home planet to develop in isolation. "Do we even know how to contact them?" Kellan asked. "I will try," said Dr. Veltar. As head of the Science Academy, she had access to the old diplomatic communication frequencies that had been used before the human withdrawal. The message she sent was simple and desperate. "This is the Galactic Council requesting immediate assistance. Our civilization faces extinction from an unknown enemy. We humbly ask for any aid you can provide. We were wrong about many things." On Earth, Admiral Song Minho received the message in his command center deep beneath the planet's surface. He had been promoted to Supreme Commander of Human Forces after the previous admiral retired. The message played on his communication screen while he reviewed reports from human colonies throughout the galaxy. "Interesting timing," he said to his aide, Captain Na Wu-jin. "Our scouts detected these void Reapers 3 months ago. We have been watching their advance. Should we respond?" Captain Na Wu-jin asked. Admiral Song Minho considered the question carefully. The galactic leaders who had insulted and humiliated humanity were now begging for help. It would be easy to ignore their request and let them face destruction alone. But that was not the human way. "Contact President Lee Hee-jin," he said, "and summon the Defense Council. We have decisions to make." The debate that followed was intense. Many human leaders wanted to let the galaxy burn after the humiliation they had endured. The aliens had called them primitive animals and refused to treat them as equals. Why should humanity risk their lives to save people who despised them? Dr. Choi Yuna, now Director of Xenological Affairs, argued for intervention. "We are better than they are," she told the assembled leaders. "We do not abandon people to die because of pride. If we let the galaxy fall, what does that make us?" "It makes us survivors," replied General Kang Sora, who still commanded Earth's military forces. "No," Dr. Choi Yuna said firmly. "It makes us no better than they are." President Lee Hee-jin listened to the arguments from both sides before making her decision. She had taken office 2 years earlier, promising to lead humanity into a new age of prosperity and strength. "We will help them," she announced. "Not because they deserve it, but because it is the right thing to do. And because this is our chance to show them what humans are truly capable of." The orders went out immediately. Human fleets throughout the galaxy received instructions to reveal themselves and engage the Void Reapers. Ships that had been invisible for years suddenly appeared on galactic sensors, their advanced technology clearly visible to anyone who cared to look. The galactic response to humanity's revelation was shock and disbelief. The simple transport ships they remembered had been replaced by sleek vessels that seemed to bend light around their hulls. The small human delegation had become a massive fleet that dwarfed anything in galactic civilization. "How is this possible?" Chancellor Pro Tem Kellan whispered as she watched human ships materialize around Nexus Prime. Captain Na Wu-jin's voice came through the communication system, calm and professional. "This is the Human Defense Force responding to your request for assistance. We are here to help." The first engagement between human and Reaper forces took place near the ruins of the Zilithian homeworld. Galactic observers watched in amazement as human ships engaged the supposedly invincible enemy with weapons and tactics that seemed impossible. Where galactic weapons had failed completely, human weapons tore through Reaper defenses. Where Reaper technology had dominated every previous battle, human ships moved with speed and precision that left their enemies confused and helpless. The galaxy was about to learn what 5 years of silent preparation had accomplished. The final battle began above the galactic capital world where Nexus Prime orbited like a wounded metal moon. Thousands of Void Reaper ships had gathered for what they believed would be the last major assault on galactic civilization. Their mechanical minds calculated victory with mathematical certainty. They had not calculated for humanity. Admiral Song Minho stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable as it emerged from stealth near the edge of the battle zone. Around him, hundreds of human vessels shimmered into visibility like ghosts becoming solid. The galactic defense forces that remained were scattered and desperate, their ships damaged and their crews exhausted from weeks of losing battles. "Status report," Admiral Song Minho commanded. "Void Reaper forces number approximately 3,000. Vessels," reported Captain Na Wu-jin from his position at the tactical station. "Galactic survivors are down to less than 200 ships. Enemy victory probability was 98% before our arrival." "And now?" Admiral Song Minho asked. "Now they are about to learn what happens when you underestimate humans." Captain Na Wu-jin replied with a cold smile. The human fleet moved with precision that amazed the watching aliens. Instead of charging directly at the enemy like previous galactic forces had done, the human ships spread out in complex patterns that seemed random, but were actually carefully calculated. Captain Lee Hyun, now commanding the assault cruiser Determination, led the first strike group. His target was a massive Reaper command vessel that had been coordinating enemy attacks. The alien ship was protected by energy shields and armor that had proven impenetrable to galactic weapons. Initiating quantum torpedo spread, Lee Hyun announced. The weapons that launched from his ship did not follow normal physics. They phased in and out of existence, passing through Reaper shields as if they were not there and striking the hull directly. The Reaper command ship shuddered as explosions bloomed along its surface. For the first time in the war, a Void Reaper vessel showed visible damage. Impossible, transmitted the mechanical intelligence controlling the Reaper fleet. Our defensive systems are absolute. Your weapons should not be able to penetrate our barriers. Your technology is advanced, replied Admiral Song Minho through the general communication channel. But you think in straight lines. Humans learned long ago that the best way through a wall is not always a direct path. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Human ships did not just fight the Reapers. They seemed to dance around them, using speed and maneuverability that defied physics. When Reaper weapons locked onto human vessels, the targets would simply vanish, appearing somewhere else moments later. Commander Kim Tae-ho, now captain of the stealth destroyer Shadow, led a boarding party against a Reaper harvesting ship. His team used personal teleportation devices to appear inside the enemy vessel, bypassing all external defenses. Remember, he told his soldiers as they materialized in the Reaper ship's control center, these machines learn from experience. Do not give them time to adapt. The boarding action was swift and brutal. Human soldiers used weapons that could disrupt the electronic minds of the Reapers, while battlefield AI systems analyzed enemy technology in real time. Within minutes, they had captured the ship's central processing unit and begun uploading human computer viruses into the Reaper network. The effects spread throughout the enemy fleet like a plague. Reaper ships that had moved with perfect coordination suddenly began firing on each other as their navigation systems became confused. Enemy weapons turned against their own vessels as human programs took control of targeting computers. Their technology is impressive, admitted Dr. Shin Yoonji, who was monitoring the battle from her position aboard the command ship. But they never learned to defend against enemies who fight with information as well as weapons. The turning point came when the human AI systems achieved something that had seemed impossible. They began converting captured Reaper ships to fight on the human side. The mechanical beings that had appeared invincible found themselves outnumbered by their own vessels. High Priest Morgeth watched from his refugee ship as the tide of battle shifted. He had seen his homeworld destroyed and his people slaughtered by the Reapers. Now he watched in amazement as the humans turned the enemy's greatest strength against them. How are they doing this? He whispered to his aide. I do not know. The aide replied, their technology is beyond our understanding. The final Reaper command vessel made one last desperate attempt to salvage the battle. It launched itself directly at Nexus Prime, intending to destroy the galactic capital and as many lives as possible. Its massive bulk accelerated through space, like a metallic mountain, its weapons charging for a final devastating attack. Captain Lee Hyun intercepted it with the Determination. His ship was tiny compared to the Reaper vessel, but he had weapons that the enemy could not comprehend. A single shot from his main gun opened a quantum rift that swallowed the Reaper ship completely, removing it from existence. The silence that followed was deafening. For weeks, the sound of battle had filled galactic space. Now there was only quiet as the surviving beings tried to understand what they had witnessed. Admiral Song Minho opened a general communication channel to address the galactic survivors. His voice was calm and professional, showing none of the anger that many humans still felt about their previous treatment. This is Admiral Song Minho of the Human Defense Force. The immediate threat has been neutralized. Medical and repair vessels are standing by to assist anyone who needs help. Chancellor Pro Tem Kellan responded from Nexus Prime, her voice shaking with emotion. Admiral, we cannot express our gratitude. You saved us all. We did what was necessary. Admiral Song, Minyo replied simply. Dr. Shin Yunji took over the communication. As Earth's chief diplomatic officer, it was her responsibility to address the political implications of what had just happened. Leaders of the galactic community, she began. 5 years ago, you called humans primitive because we approached problems differently than you. You dismissed us as violent because we prepared for war while hoping for peace. You mocked our technology because it did not match your expectations. The communication channel remained silent as she continued. But when extinction came for all of you, it was our primitive innovation that found solutions your advanced science could not discover. It was our barbaric warrior spirit that stood between you and annihilation. It was our inferior technology that proved superior when survival was at stake. Chancellor Protem Kellan found her voice. Dr. Shin, we were wrong, completely and utterly wrong. We ask for your forgiveness and hope that we can begin again with proper respect and understanding. The past is done, Dr. Shin Yunji replied. What matters now is the future. Humanity does not seek to rule the galaxy or punish those who wronged us. We seek partnership with species who are willing to treat us as equals. The reconstruction that followed the Void Reaper War transformed galactic civilization. Human technology and innovation, shared freely with all species, elevated everyone to new levels of prosperity and capability. Terraforming techniques that had taken centuries now required only months. Transportation systems that had limited galactic commerce suddenly allowed instant travel between star systems. But the most important change was philosophical. The species that had mocked humanity for their differences now eagerly sought to learn from human approaches to problem-solving. The diversity of thought that had once been seen as primitive was now recognized as the source of innovation and strength. President Lee Hee-jin stood before the rebuilt Galactic Council 5 years after the war ended. The chamber had been redesigned to give equal representation to all member species, with humans holding a position of honor but not dominance. The galaxy we are building together, she said to the assembled representatives, is stronger than any single species could create. Alone, we have learned that survival depends not on conformity, but on the ability to think differently when facing the impossible. The applause that followed came from beings who had once laughed at human aspirations. They had learned through bitter experience that wisdom could come from unexpected sources, and that strength was not always what it appeared to be. In the end, the consequences of insulting humanity had been far greater than anyone could have imagined. The galaxy had gained defenders, innovators, and partners who would help them face whatever challenges the universe might bring. And humanity had gained something even more valuable, the knowledge that they could rise above hatred and choose mercy, even when revenge would have been easier. The insulting words of dead chancellors were remembered now only as a cautionary tale about the price of arrogance and the unexpected power of underestimated species. The galaxy was a better place because humans had chosen to be better than those who had wronged them.